All right, well, I'm happy to welcome Kano Sasaguchi to the Nature Network Speaker Series. Kano is an international student from Japan and a master's student at the University of Alberta. Kano completed a bachelor's degree in paleontology at the University of Alberta and worked as a field and laboratory technician at the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology over 2 summers. Kano's current research focus is on insect fossils from Alberta, studying both historical collections housed at the university and newly discovered fossil material. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Right. Sorry, before start, Nick, do you see my screen just a slide or my script as well on the side?
Just the slide.
Okay, sounds good then. That's perfect, I guess. Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for taking your time on Thursday evening with me. My name is Kano Sasaguchi, a first year master student at the University of Alberta, studying insect fossils. Today, for about half an hour, I will take you through the world of insects from 58 million years ago of Alberta and talk about my master's thesis project at the U of A. Insects are tiny and often forgotten members of in modern ecosystem and in the world of paleontology. Here I want to bring them into a light. So I hope you find this topic as fascinating as I do. So my undergraduate degree was fully on paleontology, and then I worked as at the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Drumheller for 2 summers as a field technician, as Nick introduced. And then I have done field work across Alberta, collecting dinosaurs, other vertebrates, plants, and insect fossils materials, as well as spending hours preparing fossil materials for display at the museum. And now I am working on my master's degree on insect fossils with John Acorn and Felix Sperling as my co-supervisors. Since I have a privilege of giving the first paleontology talk with Nature Alberta this year, I would like to start with a definition of what the paleontology is. Paleontology is the area of study in science about the past life on Earth based on fossil evidence. And fossils are any evidence of past life preserved in a rock record. Paleontology is an interdisciplinary field with multiple subdivisions of studies. From fossil evidence, we can study about biology and the physiology of animal itself, classification of groups as taxonomy, and sometimes trace fossils leaves good evidence of their behaviors as well while they're living. Also, collection of data can be used to speculate the climate and environmental conditions in the past. Morphology of plants or geochemical analysis bring precise understandings of the environment, such as stable isotope analysis with ambers, which can tell you what type of conifers produce the sap. Understanding the plant communities gives you a great insight into local environmental conditions at the time. Paleontology is extensively done in North America, and Alberta is one of the places with rich resources and research opportunities. This map shows the age of rock at the surface, I mean the bedrock of the Alberta. The whole province is largely covered by late Cretaceous rocks for about 75%, which is in yellow part. And I can actually have a pointing thing here. Can you see the red thingy going on? Yeah, so the yellow part is the late Cretaceous bedrocks. And then another big portion is in red here, which is a younger rock from Paleocene after the last mass extinction. These fossil-rich bedrocks have brought the Alberta significant attention for both their research and heritage value. So I was born and raised in Japan. Interestingly, Japan always has a big fascination with dinosaurs in paleontology. I remember as a kid having a multiple big events during summer breaks where thousands and thousands of people visited. And Alberta, especially, has always been known as the place to go if you love dinosaurs. And these two first posters, these two, are past special exhibit, which introduced Alberta specimens and paleontologists at the Dinosaur Museum I used to work at during my high school. And this third cover here is a manga comic by very famous Japanese manga artist modeling Phil Curry, a paleontologist, and then my professor at the U of A, who is, I think, watching this talk right now. The museum I worked at in Japan during high school, the Fukui Prefectural Dinosaur Museum, had has had a sister partnership with the Royal Trio Museum in Drumheller since it opened in 2000. So I think now you have no wonder why I ended up in Alberta as a dinosaur kid. And just like many other Japanese international students at the U of A. During my undergrad, I came across an introductory entomology course. This immediately fascinated me and put me in the dilemma of if I want to study more about insects or I want to still continue working on paleontology. I was like, what should I do? And then I contacted an insect taxonomist at U of A, Dr. Felix Sperling, and explained my conundrum between entomology and paleontology. And his response was, then why don't you do paleoentomology, insect fossils? This is how I started my undergrad thesis research project with insect fossils. And shortly after, Felix introduced me to John Acorn, a professor at the U of A. John is an entomologist and called himself as a part-time paleontologist as well. Now they are my supervisors for my master's degree. So, first of all, why do we care so much about insects? Felix always says, too many bugs, but too little time. I think this is very true. Insects are the most dominant group of organisms on Earth. More than half of all known species are insects, and they are also one of the longest lineage on land, dating back to 400 million years ago for the first fossil record. However, insect fossil records are globally scarce by the nature of their small bodies and relatively fragile bodies. They are not as likely to fossilize as other organisms might. And approximately 46,000 fossil insect specimens have been described, which means there are only 124 individuals, about 124 individuals represent per million years of insect history. Considering how many insects we can find in modern world, I think this number is very, very small. Fossil insects are mainly found in two modes in preservations, amber inclusions, or compression fossils. In today's talk, I focus on compression fossils. Those are the fossils found in sedimentary rock layers, just like this photo right here with the scale in my hand, are produced when insects are buried in fine sediments, usually associated with low energy water, such as ponds or lakes, and preserves as a thin carbon film. Insect fossils that I study are housed in the Strickland Entomological Museum at the U of A in a bioscience building, where we have about 3,000 specimens, mainly from Alberta and BC, where I am actually giving a talk right now. So these four cabinets behind me is well, we're still fossils, and we have about 70 drawers with 3,000 compression fossils. So considering how many big space you have to store big dinosaur femur, insects are pretty compact. And this collection was put together by four key figures. Betty Spears was an amateur fossil collector who lived in Red Deer, and she donated about 400 specimens collected from the Red Deer area. And her contribution was acknowledged by multiple species of new insects and plants named after her, just like the sunfly here, and then Geoffrey esperlii, one of the paleo plant from these sites. And her biography is written up by her son, Dale Spears, in this bulletin by Paleontological Alberta Paleo Society. So you can also have free access online too. And then another key figures for the collection of insect fossils are Dennis Whiten and Patricia Mitchell. Both did intensive collection at the Red Deer area, the same locality as Betty Spears. They contributed to multiple publications for specimens from these sites as well. Lastly, Mark Wilson, emeritus professor at U of A, a fossil fish researcher, paleogeologist. He put the collection together at the museum in the 4 cabinets. These cabinets is actually established by Mark Wilson, and he himself was a fish researcher, so he did his own research, the field work in BC, collected many insects, or many fish, and then also encountered with many insects as well. And there are about 700 specimens from Alberta, mainly from Red Deer area shown in this map. And Burbank right here and Joffre Bridge, downstream of the Red Deer River, are the most productive sites for insect fossils. And then I will talk in more details in a bit about these sites. Paskapoo Formation is the name of the rock unit with insect fossils at these localities, which is about 58 million years ago of Paleocene age. This red dashed line here is the famous dinosaur ending extinction in 66 million years ago. So the Paskapoo here is shortly after the event. And then on this map of Alberta, almost all the surface area in red is the Paskapoo Formation. Based on mammal and plant fossil evidence from these sites, the environment of these deposits back in the day is thought to be warm, humid, and swampy subtropical environment. From Paskapoo Formation, there are at least 9 insect orders identified so far. Dragonflies, mayflies, grasshopper, churbugs, ants and sawflies, beetles, caddisfly, and scorpionflies, and true flies. This is very diverse assemblage of insects from considering how patchy and small the deposits are. Now I am going through actual insect fossils from these 2 sites, both described and non-described specimens. First site is Joffre Bridge, which is already intensively studied by a paleobotanist as well as a mammalian paleontologist. And Alberta's largest Paleocene mammal, Pantodons, is found from this site as well, Joffre Bridge. And John and I visited this site 2 summers ago, last summer, and then found it very vegetated and then unfortunately no longer accessible unless you bulldoze the land again. But not only plants and mammals, we also find very nicely preserved insect materials here from Joffre Bridge. These are the type specimens of odonates, the dragonflies and damselflies. Wings are main body parts to use to describe many insects, but we also have a very nicely preserved nymph, the juvenile dragonfly, the odonates as well, in a fossil form. So you have the whole different life stage of insects, which is really cool. And this is the whole body of adult beetle from also Joffre Bridge. Identifying fossil beetle without having antennae and leg clearly preserved in the fossil is very tough. But we are tentatively assigning this beetle to family Elucalidae, which are associated with freshwater stream. So yeah, this study, the analysis on this fossil is still work in progress. This is another specimen work in progress, the wing from possible sawfly, which is the first sawfly from Paskapoo Formation, at least from family Siridae. Moving on to the next site, Burbank, at the confluence of Blind Man and the Red Deer River. And John and I have spent about 6 or 7 days at this site, this really well-known localities. This is a very pretty site, but the exposure is kind of high up in the riverbank, as you can see by the Ryusuke, who is in the red shirts here, is standing on the hill. The fossil-bearing rock unit is between these coal seams in the dark area, so it's a pretty hard, dangerous place to explore. But we have so far found two larvae, so this site still produces fossils, which is cool. So from this site, Burbank site, a few fossils have been described, including this beautiful crane fry. This is the only species of beetle described from Pascapu Formation so far, like from entire Pascapu Formation. This is the only beetle that we have name on. Though there are actually more than 100 of adults in larval materials sitting in the cabinets. So this tells you how hard it is to do beetle taxonomy, at least from fossils. And this fossil beetle is assigned to genus Donacia. And Donacia is a very habitat-specific group and still living today. Larvae are always found in the water lily stem in a pond. And interestingly, the locality where this fossil is from also has a fossil water lilies. So the possible association between Donacia beetle and the water lilies can go back for 58 million years ago. I think this is really fascinating fact. Another fascinating group of beetle is found from Burbank locality, which is the actually key specimen for me to continue working on insects from Alberta for my master's. During my last year of my undergrad, I decided to work on this peculiar morphotype of beetle larvae called type B, with elongated terminal segments, just like these projections on the end of the abdomen. So this is the head of the larvae. And then Patricia Mitchell and Dennis Whiten worked on the larvae, including all the larvae fossils from this locality back in 1979. However, they decided not to give a taxonomic classification, but leave them as just a morphotype bins, just like type A, type B, and type C. So my research was, as undergrad, was to work on specifically type B larvae to identify taxonomically what this is. After many hours of literature search and comparison with other specimens, the modern specimens, and we came across with this species called the Paralichus pectinatus, live in Japan. Although this is a low resolution of compression fossils, specimens from 58 million years ago in Alberta is surprisingly similar to one lives today in Japan. This finding left us with many questions where I couldn't just get my degree and leave this place, which I have to stay in here to do my master's. So what is the point of identifying all these specimens? One of the strengths of studying insect fossils is that insects are highly specialized in their interactions with the environment. Some species feed on only a single plant species and spend their entire life cycle within that plant. This ecological specificity makes insects a powerful tool for interpreting past environments, especially when we can compare fossil taxa with their modern relatives living today, just like my Paralichus. Insects are small and, oh, sorry, just next page. The Paleocene marks the onset of one of the warmest interval on Earth history. So our Pascapu fossil insects offer a unique window into this time period of Earth global warming. This could offer insight into how ecosystems and insect lineages responded to this time of extreme warming, possibly having implications for modern-day ecological questions. Fossil helps answer some other fundamental questions too. Where do species originate? Where does native mean over a million years? And how have lineages shifted, evolved, and redistributed across space and time? These abstract, big picture questions are, of course, hard to answer, but at least for my master's degree for coming up 2 years, I want to address to these questions. What insects lived in Paleocene freshwater ecosystems in Alberta at onset of one of the Earth's warmest intervals? And what do similarities and differences with modern communities tell us? This was the overview of my fascination with insect fossils and research we have done so far. And then I am very excited to continue working on this project with my pickaxe and butterfly net. Thank you so much for listening. And then I am happy to take any questions if you have any.